Welcome to yet another video on Women's Cricket Central. Round 1 done and dusted. Each of the 12 teams have played one game so far and we've got lots to break down for you. So please make sure you've hit the like button. Make sure you've subscribed to us if you haven't already. And we will cut to the chase like always. Jeet bhai, on par with your expectations in terms of what you've seen so far?
Most of the games, yes. There was only one game that didn't turn out with a result that I was expecting, which was New Zealand West Indies. But even that is a game that should have been won by New Zealand. So fairly similar in terms of what we were expecting in the other games as well.
And before we get into each of the games, what have you made of the pitch and conditions so far? You had spoken about how these are used surfaces. We're 1 month into the English summer. There's been county cricket. There's been other domestic games happening there. So overall, in terms of the scores you've seen on the way the bowlers have been able to extract something off the surface, on par?
Not exactly on par because I was expecting these surfaces majorly to have a lot of runs in them. But given the fact that we had two games being played on one surface, one after the other, I think probably played a huge part in ensuring that we don't have those high scores. Because if you watch the first game that took place at Manchester, it was a decent pitch to bat. It was not so bad at all. And the same thing even yesterday, at Edgbaston, it was looking a really good surface for the first game, and then it just slowed down slightly in the second game. But otherwise, let's not forget that we've got games remaining at Leeds as well. So we'll probably still have quite a few high-scoring encounters from here on.
And also for the uninitiated, who've sort of been used to watching men's cricket a lot, you invariably expect teams chasing to win a lot, but that's not the case in women's cricket, of course, and we've seen that come through here as well. Historically as well, when you look at World Cup fixtures from the very first edition, chasing sides have always been at a bit of disadvantage, at least from a result standpoint. I know toss-winning teams still want to chase. Another point that we'd spoken about was the fact that spinners will play a very big role, irrespective of conditions, irrespective of the fact that this is England. We'd spoken about how pacers will have a bigger role to play, and they definitely have. If you compare it to the 2024 T20 World Cup, where you could just play 5 spinners and end the innings there, but that's not been the case here. You still have some new ball value. You still have pacers with cutters adding a lot of value to their sides. Now, coming to the games, of course, the tournament opener, England versus Sri Lanka. The game happened at Edgbaston in Birmingham. A fantastic start, one that we hoped for. 200 plus score, T20 100 for Danny White-Hodge. A thorough win for England.
Yeah, a pretty good start. Quite surprising in terms of what Sri Lanka opted for after winning the toss, because we know of them as a team that generally relies upon spin. So when you have dependency upon spin, you'd probably prefer to bowl second and just have a target on board and then defend it with your spinners. So it was already a pretty weird decision at the toss that they took, and England made the most out of it. Coming even to the tactical side of things, I felt that Sri Lanka were quite off in the power play, and after power play as well, things just got worse. So by the end of the power play, probably the score didn't look as bad. The acceleration that came after the power play was absolutely massive. So that turned out to be quite surprising. We did talk about how inexperienced their pace unit is. So it's exactly how it turned out as well, right till the end. Their pacers went for 107 runs in their 10 overs. Their spin unit is experienced, but even they went for 110 runs of their 10 overs. So they were even more expensive. Yeah, I think it was more specific to the kind of plans that they dished out, something that I just couldn't really make sense of. It started with Danny White-Hodge and Mithali Ayodhya. Mithali Ayodhya, we have talked about her ability to swing the ball away from right-handers. And with Danny White-Hodge excelling and having a strength on the offside, having no protection on the offside and offering that width, didn't make any sense. At the same time, Amy Jones is somebody who excels on the leg side. So there was Malki Mathara who was swinging the ball into her, and there was a vacant mid-wicket area. So there was that big a gap that they left, and both these batters were able to make a lot of use of it.
Importantly, they decided to let go or drop Hasini Pereira, and they also had the wicket-keeping duties handed to Kaushini Nuthyanagana, and that was a tad bit surprising. Even at toss, Chamari Attapattu was specifically asked if there were any injury concerns, and Chamari was very clear about the fact that they went ahead with a younger side because they wanted to give, the youth a lot more chances. Jeet, were you a tad bit surprised by that?
I at least assume that there has to be some sort of a niggle that Hasini should have. Otherwise, it makes no sense. She's one of your key batters in lineup. Of course, your key and experienced wicket keeper as well. So there is absolutely no reason to drop her against a team like England. So I'm still probably guessing that maybe Chamari would have forgotten or something, because we have seen what the skippers generally do at the toss. They forget the playing 11s and all that stuff. So I'm still ruling it out as just that. The reality could probably be a little different, and she probably should have some sort of a niggle, which led to her not being in the playing 11.
And also, in terms of the tactics as well, I agree with you in hindsight, of course. But because of the fact that they were relying on the spinners, it did not really make sense for them to bowl first, because you saw that in the first innings, the surface was still slightly more suited to the pacers, which is why the spinners went for runs. And in all fairness, their pacers had done a more than decent job till the 18th or the 19th over. The last 2 overs went for 44 runs, and that essentially sealed the game for England, and there was no coming back from that. But if Sri Lanka want to be really harsh, then I don't mind them going for someone like a Chetana Vimukti in the next game if they want another pacer, or if they are happy with Nilakshi De Silva's bowling abilities, then they can go for someone like a Nimasha, who is another slow left arm spinner, if they want to double down on their spin strengths. I don't mind them having this one frontline pacer and a Nilakshi, heading into the game versus New Zealand, because make no mistake, this is practically a must-win game. The game is happening at Southampton, so that's probably one thing that will go against the spinners' favor. They would want to just ensure that they have at least some semblance of a pace bowling attack, on surfaces like these, because Southampton is not exactly known for its ability or for its spin friendliness, if that makes sense. But Sri Lanka definitely have a thing or two to think about. Not so much for England though, right, Jeet? We spoke about issues, but all those issues were taken care of when Danny White-Hodge was in such sublime form.
That's exactly what happened. Danny White-Hodge, you cannot keep her quite for long. She was absolutely outstanding, made use of the kind of tactics that Sri Lanka had on display. So 9 of the 13 fours that she scored came on the offside. So they just fed to her strength. So it was probably a great thing to happen. Coming to the bowling as well, I think most of the bowlers were pretty much on song. I think everybody was amongst the wickets, barring Danny Gibson. So, and the fact that Freya came into the picture as well made a huge difference. Probably it's the best start, or it's the best opposition that they probably could have got at that point in time. And the fact that they were put into bat in beautiful conditions also probably worked in their favor. I felt their spinners were a lot more smarter. You'd expect Sri Lankan spinners to do a better job given their experience and given their guile and craftiness. All the English spinners ended up having a lower average speed than all the Sri Lankan spinners. So that also perhaps stood out to me. Kavisha Dilari, in fact, got into a situation where Sri Lanka were desperate for wickets. So she started with her off spin in the first over, and then she turned to her wrist spin, but nothing seemed to have worked for them. And they'll have a lot to learn, coming to the next game.
Yeah, England definitely, that was a very good performance, a comprehensive win for them, and exactly the kind of win they would have wanted to kickstart their World Cup campaign. Key for me, of course, with the bowling was, I agree with you, with the way the spinners in particular bowled, I thoroughly enjoyed. Once again, Charlie Dean has been, I don't think I've seen her bowl better than this. Just her control over pace, her control over lines and lengths. It almost feels like she gets the ball exactly where she wants it to be. And more often than not, she has the right idea of where the ball should be any which ways. They next play Ireland and Scotland. Speaking of these two sides, they took on in match 2. It was the European derby. In all fairness, we did have Scotland starting off as favourites, and that performance was as comprehensive as it gets for them, because you expected it to be a lot more closer than that. Ireland have taken part in multiple editions, and they're still sort of yet to notch up their first ever World Cup victory. And for Scotland to do that in their very first game of the campaign, fantastic result.
It was, properly thorough and properly professional in all the facets of the game. There was just too much going against Ireland in terms of the bowling and the spin as well. At Manchester, I know the conditions were better in that first game, but that spin quality was just not good enough for Ireland, with Amy Maguire also conceding a lot of runs. And we talked about Cara Murray's struggles with her discipline as well, dragging the ball short, at times really full. So comparatively, they bowled 6 overs and went for 63 runs, did the Irish spinners. And at the same time, the Scotland spinners took 6 for 35 and 8 overs. So that was a huge difference right then and there. But what really stood out to me was the fact that the boundary was not pulled in. It was a decent boundary size, and Scotland were absolutely outstanding in making use of that. Just imagine, they ran 24 twos. That is very uncommon for a women's game. It was quite insane. Comparatively, Ireland were far lesser than that. The power play, I still felt Ireland bowled pretty well in the first 6 overs, but what happened, or what came after the first 6 overs in the middle 10, is what pretty much sealed the game for Scotland, with them notching up 105 runs without losing a single wicket, and the two Price sisters, bringing their experience to the fore and making the ultimate use of it.
That was an excellent point that you brought up, and one that I also had in mind for Scotland. It wasn't the fact that they racked up a lot of boundaries. It's the way they just kept rotating strike. They hardly played any dot balls. In fact, they ended that innings with a non-boundary strike rate of 95.3, which is insanely high, to be honest. We usually see it hover around 60s or 70s. And on the flip side, Ireland unfortunately ended their innings with a non-boundary strike rate of just 58.9. I would say just about average or below average, but because Scotland was so good in playing the fields and playing the ground importantly, and that massively played in their favor. Once again, like I said, Scotland were very professional in the way they went about their business. It wasn't one of those gritty wins that made you think, yeah, you know what, of course, Scotland, Ireland, it's a game of evens. I don't think it was a game of evens. Ireland played Gabby Lewis at number 3, something we didn't see coming. We thought she will slot up, at the top when she comes into the Irish lineup. Were you surprised by that, or do you expect, something to change in the second and third game?
Before the warm-ups, at least, I thought that Alana Dalton will shift down to number 5 and Gabby Lewis will take over her spot. But watching what transpired in the warm-ups, I did kind of get a feeling that they're going to stick with Alana Dalton and have Gabby Lewis at number 3. So that's what they went ahead with. I don't think they'll change it right away. Probably it will take a couple of more failures for Alana, after which they probably will make that switch. But I will stick to the same thing for both the sides. I don't think Catherine Fraser needs to open. And for Ireland, I don't think Alana Dalton needs to open. Both are better off down the order. I don't expect that to happen right away. It will probably happen from game 4 if it doesn't work out in the remaining 2 games as well.
For me, more than Alana Dalzell, it's the fact that Gabby Lewis had to sort of come in at number 3, and 11 of 19 batting out of the power play did not really help her case at all. So that's why I personally, just keeping the skipper in mind and ensuring that she gets her best position, and she is definitely their best batter. So you would want to ensure that she's given her preferred position, and let's see how that plays out. I was genuinely a bit surprised. Fair enough, even in the warm-up games that they played, they did have Alana Dalzell opening, but yeah, I'm not a very big fan of it. Hopefully, we'll see that change. One bit of change, of course, for Scotland was the fact that Abtaha Maqsood unfortunately fractured her hand during the warm-up games, which meant she was ruled out of the tournament, which in turn meant that Gabriela Fontella would feature for them along with Rachel Slater. We'd spoken about how it would be an either-or situation between these 2 options. Wasn't to be the case. I think the conundrum was taken care of. Fair to say, Jeet, that they will stick to this, combination against England as well.
Yeah, I don't think they'll change it. Fontella didn't have a good run. We could still see that, she adds that X factor. So watching, some of the academy games for Yorkshire, I thought she would be in a pace range of 103 to 107 kph on an average, but she was 108.6 on average, with one of her deliveries clocking 111. So that's absolutely outstanding for the 18-year-old. I don't see a reason why they need to, change her spot and get Hannah Rainey into the side. Gabriela Fontella makes a lot more sense than Hannah Rainey, if I have to put it very clearly. In fact, I was really hoping that, when Ireland were 9 down, Catherine Bryce will probably bring Fontella back into the attack, so that hopefully she gets last wicket and feels good about her debut and feels as if she has contributed to this particular win. That didn't happen, but luckily at least the last catch was taken by Fontella. So good to see her make a debut, and man, she's a very, very bright prospect, looking at her and given the kind of pace and the bite that she has got. This is incredible.
Fingers crossed she does well for Scotland. And apologies, I earlier mentioned that the next game is versus England. The next game is versus West Indies, and then eventually they'll play England. Both happens in this week itself, and both games are coming live from Leeds. Apart from that, now moving on to the next game, Australia versus South Africa. A game that we thought will be one of those encounters to watch out for. It started off that way. Australia were on the match 60 odd for 4 in the 8th over, but Australia just showed what Australia does.
Yeah, their batting depth is so good right now. Perhaps the best out of all the teams in women's cricket, in men's cricket, to be fair. But yeah, I think that knock from Phoebe Litchfield made a huge difference. The confidence that she had, and let's not forget that, she's coming off not having played the warm-up games, the unofficial ones or the official ones, with that bit of a niggle that she was carrying, which I think Sophie Molyneux did mention about. I was not so sure about how she's going to go this time around, but she came out whacking it as if she has been playing for a long time. So I think that knock played a huge part in helping Australia get to that 170 mark, scoring whatever 50 of 20 odd deliveries with a strike rate of 208 on that surface, when all the other Australian batters just went at a combined strike rate of 123 is a big difference. So a great start for Phoebe Litchfield, and Australia just showed that it's going to be really difficult to topple them over in this particular tournament.
And with South Africa as well, I don't know to what extent do you agree with this, but I wasn't entirely happy with the fact that they decided to promote Nadine de Klerk up the order. I know that she's a great batter. It's not a reflection of batting ability. I know she can bat at number 4 if needed, but you have a Marizanne Kaap who is a genuinely good batter herself. It's not like she's any mug, and she can also attack from the get-go. We've seen that in the last couple of years or so. She's really upped her strike rate. So were you happy with that move?
Look, for me, it's more about distributing the number of power hitters that South Africa has got. Previously, they had the issue they didn't have a Kayla Reneke, so they needed a finisher alongside Chloe Tran, because in case Chloe Tran fails, then they had no one. So they had, of course, Nadine de Klerk batting down the order. But now they've got an Aneri Dirksen coming to the side. They've got Kayla Reneke having come into the side and excelled in that role as a finisher. So what makes it really important at that one time, when you've got 4 big hitters, is to spread them out. And the only way of spreading them out is to bat a couple of them up top and a couple of them down the order. There is no point having Chloe Tran, Nadine de Klerk and Kayla Reneke at 6, 7, 8 or 7, 8, 9. When you've got 4 Dirksen at 3 makes sense over Tasman Brits. Nadine at 4 makes sense. Laura Woolward also has actually improved her strike rate significantly. So your 2, 3, and 4 are really good attacking batters who can find boundaries. And then down the order, you've got Chloe Tryon and Kayla Renke who can do the job. So I personally didn't really mind that. Let's also not forget that Marizan Cap, at least for the last 15 to 20 months that I have observed, I feel she has been woefully out of touch with the bat. So I know she looked really good in that short cameo that she played. She was middling the ball, but I think she's been struggling for form for a long time. And I am more than happy to have a bat at number 5 because of the fact that she's bowling 4 overs as well. So I just want her to come in late and just handle the situation in the middle order, play the anchor role. But I personally don't mind that. And even going forward, I'll probably stick to the same thing. Was the point of difference here was the fact that the pitch consistently got slower. So there was no value for timed shots, well-timed shots. And I think that's perhaps one of the big reasons why even Laura Woolward struggled. She's somebody who has improved a power game, but she still relies a lot more upon her timing of the ball. And when the ball is not coming onto the bat so easily or so nicely, it turned out to be a bit of a struggle for her as well. So otherwise, I don't really mind that. I'm probably going to stick with Nadine at number 4.
Another thing, we spoke about Manchester. We spoke about how Australia will potentially start with Alana King, and that's exactly what they did. They went ahead with just the one frontline pacer in Kim Garth. Of course, they had Nicola Carey and Annabelle Sutherland to boot. But South Africa went the opposite way. They went ahead with just the one frontline spinner in Nonkululeko Malaba. They did not bowl Kayla Reneka. They did not bowl Ellyse. They only gave a couple of overs to Chloe Tryon. So they bowled 6 overs of spin. On the flip side, Australia bowled 13 overs of spin. What did he make of that? And that's definitely a change South Africa will have to consider, because their game versus India, which is an important encounter, is also from Manchester.
Like you mentioned, I think that was my point as well in terms of the two teams and the usage of spin. Just bowling 6 overs of spin on a surface that is spin friendly is just ridiculous in my point of view. Of course, you have Malaba, who is your lead spinner, but then it's just part-timers and Tryon, Ellyse. You have Reneka, who is not a part-time spinner as such, but she's not having a massive role to play with her spin. I don't know why they are not turning to her. At the same time, Australia, 12.4 overs of spin and 16.4 overs. So this 4 overs of pace is all that they dished out. And you could see the massive difference that the two teams had. South Africa, having said that, have got a lot to think in terms of the combination. The pace attack also is something we talked about. Cap was not looking 100% in the warm-ups, but she still did a pretty good job. Her pace range was pretty high. But Shabnam Ismail, again, the same issue. She was really expensive. Litchfield took her on. Even her pace has dropped down. It's a pretty clear-cut thing. It's still good as compared to the other paces, of course, but it's not the Shabnam Ismail we know.
I don't know. I mean, if it was Chloe Tryon's overs, that sort of made Laura Woolford wary of using her other spinners in Ellyse and Kayla Reneka. But at the end of the day, their pacers went at about 9.2 runs per over, 9.3 runs per over. Their spinners went at 7, and this includes the 20 runs that Chloe Tryon gave in her 2 overs. Malaba was fantastic. Just 22 runs conceded off her quota of 4 overs. So again, something they will have to think about, especially because their game versus India, the big match that we're talking about, is happening at Manchester as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Australia, on the other hand, they take on Bangladesh, and I don't think we have too many things to talk about. They've done a really good job. We have a lot to talk about the next game, though. New Zealand versus West Indies. Shemaine Campbell decided that that night would be the night where she raises her bat and scores her first ever 50 in 120 odd games that she's played for the West Indies. A fantastic knot, albeit a slightly lucky one, but again, it's not her fault that she was dropped. A brilliant performance that, and again, just the kind of win that West Indies would want at the start of their campaign to, kickstart it.
Yeah, too good from the West Indies. I personally still felt it was New Zealand's game even heading into last, I think, 4 or 5 overs, but despite those drop catches, I thought the equation was still tight, and I always felt that it's a matter of getting Shemaine out and Doughton out. They were able to get Deandra Doughton out, but Shemaine, batted throughout, and she had a huge impact on the eventual result of the game. Yeah, I think the fielding was a letdown. We do see certain bad days for New Zealand, but I don't think they have so many bad days in the field or in terms of catching and everything. I think they have more good days and bad days in the field. But this day, I think things went too bad for them. It was just horrible from all aspects. But look, I mean, it happens with anybody. We have seen, at least it's not a scenario where it's a Pakistan or an India where you're going to see mishaps on most days. But yeah, it's something for them to work on. Just take it on the chin and move on. It was a bad day. Can't do anything about it. Just that they've lost a crucial game, and now they enter a situation where they'll have to defeat England and hope that England also defeats the West Indies. And then it will come down to that net run rate scenario, which I feel is something that didn't take a massive beating against the game in the West Indies. Just 0.12, that's not a big gap. So
yeah, one thing this result has also done, apart from the fact that West Indies now are favourites to join England in the semi-finals. I think Scotland also are now in the fray because I truly think Scotland have a chance, or they stand a chance to win versus West Indies. And if that happens, it's essentially a three-way fight, for the second semi-final spot. I think England have all but confirmed their semi-final spot with a win like that versus Sri Lanka. And in any which ways, we've spoken about how they start favourites to top the table for Group B. And again, like I said, I've made no bones about the fact that I am backing the Scots. So fingers crossed, come on. Let's see something happen. Another point you'd mentioned during the preview was the fact that you wouldn't mind promoting someone like a Shemaine Campbell if the opposition has overs of spin, overs of quality spin to deal with. And also, I'd spoken about how Shemaine Campbell would make sense if there's a bit of a collapse, or if you want someone who can just hang in there and hold and end up. And this was, in a way, a mixture of both. In some sense, you wanted someone who can also handle spin, but also someone who can hold and end up. And that's exactly what she did.
Yeah, I think one of the factors that led to Shemaine batting at number 3 was the fact that West Indies didn't have the service of Chanel Henry or Stephanie Taylor. Both were injured and out of that game 1. But that game against spin is something that we did talk about. She's really good with her sweeps, and something that's really common with the wicket keepers, right? They are generally good batters of spin. They go to their sweep shots and slog sweeps and everything. They are good at picking the variations as well. And that's exactly what she did. New Zealand's most important bowler, Millie Kerr, went for 41 off of 4 overs. But out of those 41 runs, it was Shemaine who scored 27 of them in just 12 balls. She just took her on. There was, in fact, that one moment where she was given out, LBW, but she reviewed it. Yeah. And was able to work it to her favor. So after that, it was just a one-way traffic from her side, and she, made it count, and it was really good. I think what really stood out to me was the fact that she was quite brave in terms of her approach. She didn't mind putting a prize on a wicket or anything like that. She just went after it. If it was in her slot, she just played the big shot without fearing whether she'll be caught or not. And that pretty much remained consistent right at the end. So
yeah, fantastic knock. And another thing for New Zealand was the fact that they went ahead with Nancy Patel instead of Susie Bates. Once again, a move that we'd spoken about, which we felt, is the way to go, but we don't see them probably doing that because they've given Susie Bates a lot of opportunities. I mean, the next game is later tonight, and that's versus Sri Lanka, coming live from Southampton. So any changes?
I personally don't expect any changes. I was actually hoping that Flora Devonshire also got a game in the first one because some of the matchups were in her favor, left arm spin specifically. I mean, Sri Lanka also are somebody who are low on confidence after the start that they were off to against England, and it's a side that New Zealand has played quite a few times in the last 3 or 4 years, so they'll be familiar with their game, their tactics, their players. So I don't see them requiring a change. Georgia Plymouth's spot is perhaps a spot that's a little bit up for grabs. If Susie Bates comes in somebody's spot, it could be that spot, but I still don't see that happening. After one game, you probably won't stop trusting somebody, right? I know she has had a lean patch and has struggled to have a big score for a while now, but let's not forget the opening combination still worked. And while I do admit that the bulk of the scoring was done by Izzy Gaze, it was still that pairing who quite worked out a lot better. So I don't really see them making a change.
All right, let's see what happens there. Next game, of course, Bangladesh took on Netherlands in their first encounter of the World Cup. Again, a result that we thought, was on expected lines. Bangladesh did defeat the Netherlands, but happy with what you saw from both sides?
Yeah, I think it was a good battle. Netherlands did push Bangladesh right till the end, and the fact that they were able to score that 140 odd and almost defend it was pretty good. In fact, there were times in that game, at least when the 4th wicket went down for Bangladesh, it was almost as if the game has gotten 50-50 and anything can happen from here, because Bangladesh's key batter Nigar Sultana was dismissed for a first ball duck. So it came down to Shorna Akhtar and Sharmin Akhtar to just have a partnership, stitch together a long one and see Bangladesh through. So a good game overall in terms of quality as well. A few mishaps here and there are fine. I don't really mind that. But for Netherlands, I just feel that you could see why they need exposure at the highest level. And this, of course, is not because they don't have the skills or anything. I think they are tremendously capable. They've got good skill sets. But it's more about having that experience so that they can convert these winning positions into wins. That can only happen if they've got more experience and more games at the highest level. I think this T20 World Cup is going to end up giving them a lot of experience heading into the future.
And this is sort of something that even Bibi Delida spoke about at the post-match presentation. She spoke about how there was a clear gap in that experience that you need playing at such a high-profile event. And she spoke about how, and she was quite frank about it, to be honest. She spoke about how Bangladesh, you could clearly see they were a lot more experienced in handling those pressure situations, whereas they weren't. It's all right. It is their first ever World Cup, and it is their first ever encounter in their first ever World Cup, to be precise. So once again, when you look at the batting as well, we spoke about how that's why they will have to contend with some of the options that they have because of the strike rate issues that they come with. Phoebe we'd spoken about, but I don't think she started off too badly. Babit Delira with the 50, important knock for her too.
Oh yeah, it was a great knock. I think even Phoebe, I think you probably would be referring to the two boundaries that she scored, and they looked really good. They were really well timed. And look, she plays cricket, domestic cricket in South Africa, so she's bound to be a good batter of pace, or at least timing the ball when there is nothing happening off the surface. But yeah, you could see, as soon as Maruf Akhtar stopped going to her in swingers and bowled that leg cutter, she was gone right away. So look, that's the only reason why I want her to bat down the order, so that she's not exposed to that early movement. Otherwise, she has got the skill sets. We have seen that in the qualifiers. We have seen that in a couple of knocks that she had against Germany as well. So a good one. Babette as well. You could see the nerves, right? From the very first ball that she faced against Marufa, you could see that loose drive that she played of a very full delivery that was outside the off. But the more time that she spent in the middle, you could see her getting into her elements, and she converted that really well. It's just unfortunate, she got run out on that second run after she got to a 50. So she never got to celebrate that moment. But it was still a vital knock for her. And we did talk about the fact that if Netherlands are to push for a win or to win this game against Bangladesh, Stair Callis's contribution will matter a lot, but even she was dismissed early. So despite her not contributing and yet Netherlands scoring that 140 odd and almost winning the game, I think was a massive positive for them to take. Let's not forget it was not last wicket partnership. I think it was 9th wicket partnership between Iris Willing and it was Silver Seagulls. They also contributed 26 runs. It was not a quick fire 26, but the fact that they were able to stitch together that crucial stand right at the end ensured that they didn't finish with a score like 125 and instead cross that 140 mark. So a good learning experience for them, and I think it was pretty good performance as well.
And same goes for Bangladesh, right? Like Juwaria Firdaus, we've spoken about how their openers. Dilara Akhtar also, we've spoken about how she's not coming with a lot of performances, but she had that 50 that helped her case. Juwaria Firdaus, on the other hand, not a lot of World Cup experience, and then her coming good on a game like this. Exciting in some sense when you see that batting lineup, because we've spoken time and time again about the fact that strike rate is going to be an issue.
Yeah, look, you have to use the word exciting because that's a word that you generally don't often associate with the Bangladesh batters. Shati Rani, somebody we talked about in last edition, why they tried her out. This time they're trying out Juwaria Firdaus, and you could see that she stands out from the rest. Some of her power shots, I know she's a lot more restricted towards the leg side, but even those leg side shots were really powerful, fantastic shots that pinged off the middle of a bat. But it's a good change for Bangladesh given the kind of batters that they've had in the past, and the fact that nobody is able to provide them with quick starts in the power play, I think makes a huge difference. And this knock, I think, is going to go a long way.
Yeah, speaking about a couple of good changes, they also had Fariha Trishna playing. We spoke about how that left arm angle rather would add a lot of value, and importantly, we spoke about how Sanjita should start over Nahida. I know Nahida comes with that experience, but Sanjita off late has been the much better slow left armer for them. Two very progressive moves that.
Yeah, they went by the form as far as Sanjita was concerned over Naida, and as far as Fariha was concerned, I think they went for that extra pace option. Something that you generally would want to have in these sort of conditions, because you don't want to rely just on Marufa Akhtar to bowl in the power play and then Ritu Moni after the power play, because she's somebody who relies a lot more on the cutters. So it's a good change, a good angle as well for Bangladesh to exploit, and somebody who has done quite well in the past as well. So you could see her bowling those cutters, and I think she dismissed Heather Siggers with one. So a good change for them to have, a good combination and good option to go to. Heading in the future, I don't know whether they want to stick with her, because I do see an outside chance of them probably going and doubling down on the left arm spinners and Naida potentially playing along with Sanjita. So that could happen in the future, but yeah, we'll have to wait to see. I mean, at least in this game, they didn't do too badly.
Makes sense, because Bangladesh's next game is versus Australia, and you would want to just stick to that winning combination and give them another chance. Importantly, we also know that Australia, in some sense, have poorer numbers versus left-arm pacers. I wouldn't necessarily go ahead and say it's a weakness, but yeah, that's something that they will want to try and exploit if possible. Netherlands, on the other hand, will take on India in the next game. That game will happen at Leeds, so that's also another exciting encounter. We spoke about how Babette was awestruck by the fact that she was sharing some space with Harmanpreet Kaur. Now she gets to face her and the rest of the side. Of course, it is a high-profile team that they're playing, and yeah, their first ever high-profile fixture that way of the World Cup. So it'll be something to watch out for us as well. But going on to the next game, of course, it's none other than the so-called high-profile encounter. At least the broadcasters put it that way. It was India versus Pakistan. It was anything but high-profile when you look at how the match panned out, Jeet. But once again, exactly what we expected in terms of the results.
And the fact that India won the toss also kind of helped them. I think they did talk about this pitch. Look, it's a fact. I mean, at Edgbaston, you generally don't see a massive deterioration as you generally see at the Old Trafford, purely for the fact that the pitch that they use at Edgbaston was a hybrid one, so it had like I think 90% of live grass and 10% of artificial grass. So there's not a massive deterioration that you see, but logically it made sense, right? You're playing the second game on the day on that same surface. So you'd probably look to bat first in case it surely slows down somehow. So I think that played to India's advantage, but Pakistan did have the moments. Let's face it. I mean, at least the power play, they were off to a good start with the ball, and then with the bat as well. They, I think, won the power play on both occasions. But what happened after that is perhaps the game changer, because India just ran away with it. That acceleration that came from Smriti Mandhana post 9 overs till the time she was dismissed, I personally felt it was a massive shift in momentum due to that acceleration that she had.
Yeah, you correctly pointed that out. They won the power play battle in both innings, and it was almost like, that's what they knew. That, we should win the power play battle. And they say that if you win the power play battles, you end up winning more games than not. And they thought, yeah, that's the end of the game for us. Unfortunately, wasn't to be the case. It was interesting on India's part as well. We saw Shefali get out, we saw Jemmy get out, but we spoke about Yastika and Jemmy for donkey's years in terms of how they can try this, they can try that. They actually went ahead with that combination we'd spoken about, Jemmy at 3 and then have Bharti Fulmali at 5 or Richa at 5, Bharti at 6 and so on and so forth. What did you make of that? You still think Yastika adds value and you expect her to make a comeback into the 11 because Bharti unfortunately had a failure?
Yeah, so I would still personally prefer Yastika, and it has got nothing to do with the fact that Jemmy and Fulmali both failed in game 1, but it's just about the combination here, because I'll tell you my reason here. The fact that Jemmy bats at number 3, and if India loses an early wicket, it would mean that Jemmy walks in the power play itself, which means exposing Jemmy to that early movement as well. She did get dismissed to Tasmia Rubab exactly in that manner. It was a delivery that shaped away ever so slightly, and she played the wrong shot. She went against the movement and she got a top pitch. Another big reason I feel is that just look at the trend that we've had in these 6 games where the boundaries are big, the ropes are not pulled in. It means that the value of 2s is a lot more than it generally is in women's games. So that value of 2 is perhaps a lot more important after the power play as well. So whom would you look at in India as a batter who can convert 1s to 2s? And the only name that really comes to my mind is Jemima. So what happens if Jemmy comes in early and gets dismissed even before we enter the middle phase? The batters to follow are Harmanpreet, Richa Ghosh, Dipti Sharma and Bharti Fulmali. And I wouldn't have a lot of expectations from these sort of batters to, follow and convert those 1s to 2s and have a pretty good run right till the end. But if Yastika bats at number 3 and if she's given the license to just go and attack, if she gets out, so be it. That's fine. She has got this injury and she's coming out of the injury, so she's not 100% fit. So she's also not going to convert 1s to 2s. But at least you have Jemmy at number 5. So Yastika walks in number 3, she plays aggressively, she gets out. Not saying that Bharti Fulmali can't have cameos or cannot hit those big sixes, but with these boundaries also you don't quite know, and there is no guarantee that she provides because her technique is definitely not as good enough as Yastika's. So there are quite a few imbalances. When I just compare the pros and cons, I just feel that Yastika at number 3 is still the better option than having Bharti Fulmali in the side and having Jemmy at bat at number 3.
It is an interesting argument because you can also flip it and talk about how, while that does help Jemmy's cause and Jemmy can play a much better role for India, you also would then argue that, okay, the surfaces, the way they've played out, you're not exactly getting a lot of value for your timing. And that's something we spoke about, in Manchester. That's what happened with South Africa. We don't know if it's going to be the same surface or a different surface, but assuming, even if it's a different surface, you can expect it to play somewhat similarly. Yastika is also someone who relies on her timing. She's not exactly known for power hitting ability. And on top of that, you need someone who can rotate strike fluently in the middle overs. Should the Indian openers get off to a start, or at least, end up playing till the end of the power play, you would then not know what to do with Yastika Bhatia because she won't be able to rotate the strike. She won't be able to convert those 1s to 2s. She doesn't have the power to score boundaries consistently. And that's also something they'll have to contend with. I get your point because you would want to ensure Jemmy plays in her natural position. And I feel that's number 5 for India right now based on the rest of the batters. But I also feel of fear for her because if Yastika bats at number 3 and ends up consuming a lot of deliveries, then Jemmy's entry point will also be messed up. She'll end up, batting at say the 12th or the 13th or 14th over, and that's also less than ideal in my opinion. And I agree, Bharti, unfortunately, that failure has definitely sort of complicated it a bit, but I expect the Indian think tank to still give this another go, especially versus Netherlands, because there's no value to be gained by seeing who bats well versus Netherlands. So might as well give Bharti some more game time and see if that actually helps their case versus South Africa, which of course happens on Sunday. India's bowlers, Jeet, Renuka Singh Thakur didn't start for them. It was Kranti Gaur and Arundhati Reddy, and they combined bowled just the 3 overs. They stuck to their guns, and Deepti Sharma came up with a fantastic fifer.
Yeah, I think this combination of 3 spinners and 2 pacers became a lot. I think that made a lot more sense given the fact that we were playing on this surface, which already had 40 overs being played upon. But it's just the pace combination that I was not so certain about, because I thought Nandini Sharma has to be a certain starter, because you want to dish out somebody like her against Pakistan. And even at Edgbaston, there's a lot of value for bowlers who are able to take the pace off. Those cutters, those back of the hand deliveries, and the type of bowler Nandini is, I think she would have excelled in these conditions against Pakistan a lot more than any pacer that India has got in the squad. So I expected her to start, but I thought she'll probably partner up with Arundhati, because Arundhati still has the advantage of somebody who can bat. So Arundhati had to be a starter there. So I think that pace combination did surprise me there, with Kranti Gaur being preferred. And I think India did realize that quickly as well, because neither of the 2 pacers were able to have the impact that they were expected to in the power play. So they didn't have a major role thereafter as well. But luckily, the Indian spinners did put their hand up, something that we did anticipate, especially with Sri Charni. The fact that she has succeeded in these conditions in the past as well, and the fact that she is really smart in terms of varying a pace and using arm balls and off breaks really well. But it was Deepti Sharma. I think we talked about her lack of form. Her adaptation to the kind of conditions that were on offer, I think, stood out for me. Out of all the spinners that were on display for India and Pakistan, you would not expect Deepti Sharma to end up being the slowest spinner on the average speed. So after Nashra Sandhu, it was Deepti Sharma, to be clear, but it was something that I didn't really see coming, because you don't see these sort of adaptations or these sort of changes coming from Deepti. But the fact that Shriyanka was added, I think it was pretty obvious that she's going to take the new ball or ball in the power play ahead of Deepti, with Deepti having a role after the power play. And that's exactly what happened. But for Deepti Sharma to use her angles really well, go around the wicket to the right-handers and over the wicket to left-handers, and then consistently bowl pace that was less than 75 kph is something that she was able to use to her advantage, and 5 for 10 in 4 overs. I mean, it can't get better than that. So the weaker team is out of the way. No disrespect to Pakistan, but how she goes against South Africa, against Australia, can she replicate this sort of form is what really matters. Against Pakistan, I wouldn't look into it too much, but I'm just happy with the adaptation that she made.
Yeah, there are lots to be happy about when it comes to Team India. I don't know if we can say the same for Pakistan. Interesting 11, once again, Tasmia Rubab was another name we'd spoken about, how, she is someone they should consider starting. And we'd spoken about Iman Fatima and how if she's going to be batted in number 8, you might as well just go for someone else. And they did do exactly that. They brought in Natalia Pervez. But again, that batting lineup went nowhere. The bowling as well started off brilliantly. Nashra also carried on more than decently in the middle overs, but yeah, they just completely lost the plot.
If I have to put it in one way, I would say that Pakistan went for safer options. They didn't went for those options that were quite risky or inexperienced, and that's perhaps the reason why Natalia played ahead of Iman. I'm not saying that was the correct decision, because I personally would have still preferred Iman Fatima over Natalia or anybody, even Iram Javed for that matter. I think Muniba was off to a very good start. We talked about her matchup to right-arm off-spin, and there were several occasions where she got away with it, including a couple of catches being put down pretty early. So I think she was the only positive. Even she had a slowdown later on, but the fact that there were wickets that were falling from the other end didn't help her cause either. And Indians bowled quite well to her as well, especially the Indian spinners particularly. Yeah, the batting was quite disappointing. Firoza was off to a good start. She got out. Aisha Zafar, I think, needs to work on a range of shots against spin. She just keeps going to her slog sweeps and sweep shots, and Dipti got her with one of them. Saira Jabin didn't have a good start. Natalia Pervez struggled at number 5. It was very slow now from her. Fatima Sana at least promoted her. She failed, that's fine, but at least she promoted herself in that situation, which is a good thing. Hopefully that continues going ahead as well. The game was pretty much done. I mean, Arya Riaz and Ramin Shamim, and you can't expect a lot from them given that situation. So it didn't quite work out well for them. Coming to their bowling, I think, it was probably fairly expected. I didn't expect Diana to start because the talk from that particular camp is that she's struggling for form. So the point is, if she's struggling for form, why is she in the squad? You could have easily had somebody else. Yeah, at least they added this left arm angle of Tasmia Rubab. She was off to a good start, but that last over that she bowled against Richa Ghosh and Dipti Sharma perhaps ruined her figures. She went for 41 over 4 overs, but not too good overall in terms of the bowling department either. The two spinners did a decent job. Sadia was good initially. She was expensive later on. But Nashra made a few good adjustments in her last over, especially that duel that she had with Richa Ghosh was a pretty good one.
That is true. That is true. I mean, that over went for just 3 runs, and if I'm not wrong, that was the 17th to the 18th over. So that was a fantastic over from her. And in Pakistan's case, I really hope if Natalia is going to bat at number 5, because we initially thought someone like Ramin Shameen will continue batting at number 5. If they are open to batting Natalia at number 5, might as well bring in Iman Fatima and give her that slot and tell her, just you have these 4 games and sort of try and make it your own. That's definitely one change I would look at. And Alia Riaz, I don't know. I don't know if there's even a rope, because at some point in time, we want to say the rope ends, but I don't think there's a rope, because she continues to play. Once again, yesterday, the situation. I'm not saying she should have at least gone for the kill, but you can't be batting or scoring 18 or 17 when your side needs 65 in the last 4 overs. There's very little justification that can be provided that would be valid enough. So just try. I don't know. Unfortunately, they don't have too many other options, but Iram Javi, just give them chances. I don't see what benefit are you going to get out of batting Natalia Parvez at 5 and Alia Riaz at 7, because they clearly, what you can expect from them, and they continue to sort of, stick to or deliver on those expectations itself. It's nothing. It's not a case of them breaking through the glass ceiling like we keep talking about time and time again. So that's something they'll have to consider, or else someone like a Tuba Hassan, who offers a bit of wrist spin, and someone they can consider too. So let's see what they do, because their next game is versus South Africa, and that game is also coming live from Birmingham. So it'll be interesting to see if they make any changes or they stick to their guns, because they played a game here, so they have a bit of experience. So if you want to count that as an edge, sure, let's give them that. Talking about the games ahead, just looking forward, Jeet, we spoke about each of the teams and who they play next when we spoke about their respective games. Any matches or anything that you're in particular interested in watching out for?
I think most of the games are not that good in terms of the kind of strength of the opponents that some of the teams have got. A couple of interesting games. I think Scotland versus West Indies is one of the games that I'm looking forward to. And besides that, I think the weekend, of course, has got better games with Sri Lanka, West Indies being one of the encounters. On Sunday, we've got India, South Africa, which is going to be a big clash. Other than that, I don't think we've got too many good games as such. I hope they do turn out to be really entertaining. But realistically, I don't have a lot of expectations from the sort of matchups that we've got.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, the only matches that I'm excited for are the Scotland encounters. So Scotland take on West Indies and England in this week. I just want to see how they fare. I'm not saying they start favourites or I'm backing them to win. I just want to see, because they were very professional versus Ireland, and they were very professional in the Tri-Series as well, and that excites me a lot. We've spoken about their experience, about their well-rounded bowling attack, and their batting also seems to be coming together with the Bryce sisters, Carter at the top, Fraser to some extent, Ailsa Alyssa. So a lot of things to be excited about. So I'm just rooting for them, and I don't think we can see anything better than someone like a Scotland making it through to the semi-finals ahead of New Zealand and West Indies, and I'd love to see that. But apart from that, Pakistan Bangladesh would definitely be another clash to watch out for in terms of it being an evenly matched encounter. I wouldn't say it'll have a lot of relevance to the next round, but yeah, it'll still be an encounter to watch out for. But I guess that's that from this video. Of course, we spoke about how each of the teams fared in their first ever games of this World Cup. Of course, what first ever games? But yeah, and what exactly are we expecting from the next week? There'll be lots to talk about, of course, at the end of next week. And of course, we will be back on Thursday as well, where we'll be talking about some trends that we've seen or anything technical that we want to dive deep into. Until then, it's a goodbye from both of us. Thank you so much for tuning in. And like always, please make sure you've hit the like button and make sure you've subscribed to Women's Cricket Central. Make sure you follow Jeet Vachirajani, Women's Cricket specifically on X. Follow Women's Cricket Central on Instagram as well. Until then, it's a goodbye. Take care.